Sake. The drink the whole world thinks it knows. A clear rice wine, poured hot into a tiny cup, knocked back like a shot at the end of a sushi meal. But none of that is true. Sake is not wine, it was not meant to be drunk hot, and for most of its history it was not even made for people at all. It was made for the gods. This is its story. In a village deep in the mountains, a young woman knelt before a small wooden shrine, lifted a handful of cooked rice to her lips, and began to chew. She did not swallow. She chewed slowly, patiently, until the rice turned soft and sweet, and then she leaned over a clean cedar tub and let it fall from her mouth. Her sister did the same beside her. Around them, the older women of the village watched in silence, because this was not a meal. It was a prayer. And the cloudy liquid that would bubble up in that tub over the coming days was the holiest thing these people would ever make. So how did a drink born from chewed rice and human breath become the elegant bottle on a restaurant table thousands of miles away? And why does almost everything the West believes about it turn out to be wrong? To answer that, you have to forget the little cup and go back to a time when sake had nothing to do with dinner. Long before it was a drink, sake was an offering. The two oldest books in Japan, written more than 1300 years ago, are full of it. In those pages, sake is poured for the gods, brewed by priests, and even used as a weapon by the gods themselves. There is a story every Japanese child learns. A storm god comes down to a grieving family whose daughters are being devoured, one, by a monster, a serpent with 8 heads and 8 tails, its body stretching across 8 valleys. The god does not fight it with a sword first. He tells the family to brew sake so strong it is brewed 8 separate times over, and to set it out in 8 great vats. The serpent comes, lowers its 8 heads into the 8 vats, drinks until it is senseless, and falls asleep. Only then does the god draw his blade. The very first time sake appears in Japanese myth, it is sacred, it is overwhelming, and it changes the fate of the world. This was the truth at the heart of sake from the beginning. It was not a luxury. It was a bridge between people and their gods. At every shrine in Japan, even today, you will find sake. It is offered to the spirits at the new year, at weddings, at the laying of a building's foundation. There is a special word for sake that has been offered to the gods. It comes back from the altar blessed, and the worshippers drink it to take a little of the divine into their own bodies. To share a cup was to share a bond that the gods themselves had witnessed. And in the oldest days, the people who made this sacred drink were not brewers in aprons. They were priests, and in many places, they were women. Unmarried women who served at the shrine were thought to be pure enough to handle something this holy. Which brings us to the strangest, and most misunderstood, fact in all of sake's long history. For centuries, the rice was not crushed by machines or broken down by mold. It was chewed by human mouths. The method had a name that means, quite literally, mouth-chewed sake. The women would take cooked rice or chestnuts or millet, chew each mouthful into a soft pulp, and spit it into a shared vessel. Then they waited. To a modern listener this sounds like superstition, or worse. But hidden inside that act was a piece of real science that these people could not have explained, and yet understood perfectly by instinct. Human saliva carries an enzyme. When you chew rice long enough, that enzyme begins to break the hard starch of the grain into simple sugar. You can taste it happen. Plain rice, chewed slowly turns sweet on your tongue. And sugar is the one thing that wild yeast, floating invisibly in the air of the village, needs to begin its work. The yeast lands on the sweet pulp, feeds, and turns the sugar into alcohol. The chewing was not a ritual, pretending to be brewing. The chewing was the brewing. Those village women, kneeling before the shrine, were running a chemistry experiment with their own bodies, 1,000 years before anyone had a word for an enzyme. And here is the detail the legends loved most. The task fell to young women, often the daughters of the village, and the people came to believe their sake was the purest and the finest of all. A famous old phrase even links the drink to the maidens who made it. If a modern audience knows this practice at all, it is from a single beautiful animated film, where a teenage girl makes this same chewed offering at her family shrine, and her whole story turns on the cup she leaves behind. Millions of people watched that scene without realizing they were looking at the true, ancient origin of every bottle of sake in the world. But mouths cannot brew for a nation. As villages grew into towns, and towns began to drink far more than any shrine could chew, Japan needed a better way. And it found one, not in a machine, but in a mold. Somewhere in those early centuries, brewers noticed that a particular green mold, the kind that grows on warm, damp rice, did the very same thing the chewing had done. It broke the starch into sugar. This humble mold would one day be named the national fungus of Japan, the single most important microorganism in the entire culture, the secret behind sake, behind soy sauce, behind miso, behind the deep savory taste that defines Japanese food. The mouth had taught them what was possible. The mold let them do it at scale. And this is where sake becomes something no other drink on earth can claim. Most people are told sake is a rice wine, and most people are wrong. Wine is simple. You crush grapes, the sugar is already sitting there in the juice, and the yeast eats it. Beer is a two-step dance. First you turn the grain starch into sugar, and only then, in a separate stage, do you let the yeast ferment it. Sake does something far harder. Inside a single tank, the mold is breaking starch into sugar, and at the exact same moment, in the very same liquid, the yeast is eating that sugar and turning it into alcohol. Two opposite chemical reactions, happening together, in perfect balance. Brewers have a name for it that sounds like poetry, and it is found almost nowhere else in the world of drink. It is the reason sake can reach a strength that beer never could from such delicate rice. And it is the reason a master brewer matters so much. For this fragile double reaction to work, the temperature in the tank must be held almost perfectly still. So in the cold heart of winter, the master brewers would leave their families and move into the brewery for months. They slept in short, broken shifts, waking through the freezing night to check the rice, to listen, almost, to the fermentation breathing in the dark. They sang long, slow songs whose only purpose was to measure time, so that every batch was washed and steamed for exactly the same number of beats. There were no clocks they trusted more than their own voices. A great brewer could not see the mold or the yeast, could not measure the sugar, and still had to keep two invisible armies of living things in harmony, by feel, by smell, by a lifetime of memory in the hands. We tend to picture sake as ancient and unchanging, but the version the world drinks today is surprisingly young. The clear, clean sake we recognize was perfected only a few hundred years ago, when brewers in one small coastal region discovered something they did not fully understand. The local water running down off the mountains made a sake stronger and cleaner than anywhere else. They did not know it was the minerals in that water feeding the yeast. They only knew that this water made magic, and they guarded it fiercely. That region became the beating heart of Japanese sake, and its bottles traveled by ship to the great cities, where sake finally became what the West would later meet, a drink for ordinary people, poured at the end of a long day. Which brings us, at last, to the little cup, and to the thing the world gets most wrong. Sake is not meant to be served scorching hot. Warming it gently, yes, that is real, and it can be beautiful, opening up the richer, earthier styles like a fire opening a cold room. But the custom of serving sake steaming hot in cheap restaurants abroad hides a quiet secret. Heat masks flaws. The roughest, cheapest sake was warmed precisely because warming it covered up everything that was wrong with it. The finest sake in Japan is often served cool, even chilled, in a clear glass, treated with the same reverence as a fine wine, because at that temperature it has nothing to hide. So the next time someone hands you a thimble of boiling sake and calls it tradition, you can smile, because you know the truth. You know that this drink began as a prayer chewed from the mouths of village women. You know it carries a piece of chemistry so elegant that the rest of the world still cannot quite copy it. And you know that it was never, ever a wine. The deepest lesson of sake is not really about a drink at all. It is about how the oldest, simplest, most patient human acts, chewing a grain of rice, singing in the dark, guarding a spring of clean water, can hold a wisdom that science only catches up to centuries later. The villagers did not need to understand the enzyme to trust it. They only needed to pay attention, and to be patient, and to treat the work as sacred. And maybe that is the part worth keeping. So here is my question for you. When you drink, or cook, or make anything with your own hands, do you rush it to the end, or do you let it take the time it truly needs? Tell me in the comments. Tales of Old Japan publishes a new story every Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday. If this one stayed with you, subscribe and read more at the Japan Dispatch, the newsletter that keeps these old stories alive. The link is waiting in the description.